Kanpur.
Sir,
I
please
also
hold
welcome
on.
to the
Okay.
participants from various colleges, researchers, scholars from various parts and sections, and from abroad too. I also welcome to social activists and my students. Friends, international relations, trade and defense are covers to most vital parts of our individual as well as public sphere, like economy, history, politics, culture, and many others. Recently, because of the conflict and tensions with our neighboring countries, we are in anxieties. Security is very important for the citizens of any country. Inner security and outer security both are equally important in our day-to-day life. When you think to compare the social, cultural, and economic situation of China and India, result came out always is that there is a difficult situation for India. No doubt, our dreams and our goals of development and prosperity are so high, but our ground reality is far away from our dreams and goals. In case of inner and outer security, particularly, the situation is not so different and hopeful. That's why the departments of economics, history, Pali Prakrut, and political science of Dr. Ambedkar College is trying to think and discuss about the both types of security. This is one of the serious issue. This issue having the future background and consequences on coming generations, particularly our income, employment, savings, investment, production, and ultimately the good health, good education, good living conditions, poverty eradication programs, and good politics all are depends upon these issues. In fact, there are two issues related to us. First is defense of our borders, which may be affect to sovereignty of our nation. And second, which is equally significant, that affect on our economy, politics, and culture after this corona impact, especially. Both can be damaged to our Indian society. That's why there is a need of thinking and try to find out the solutions on these two issues. Hence, our departments of our college it decided to organize a webinar on these issues. Now, time has come to start this webinar. We have dropped the formalities of inaugural function and so on. We are starting first session directly. I request to our Honorable Principal Ma'am, Dr. Pratibha Siriya, for welcome speech.
Thank you, Kamlesh sir. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to one and all. Today I feel very happy to welcome you all to this international webinar, and it's my proud privilege to brief you all about my institution. Dr. Ambedkar College, Nagpur, founded by the visionary late Padma Shri Dada Saheb Gaikwad in 1964 and is affiliated to Rashtrasanta Tukdoji Maharaj Nagpur University, is indeed a time-tested center for higher learning. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware that Dr. Ambedkar College, run under the aegis of Paramapuja Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar Smarak Samiti, is situated in the sprawling premises of the Holy Diksha Bhumi, which is the historic place where Bharat Ratna Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar embraced Buddhism. With a modest beginning in 1964, the institution now has 56 glorious years of experience in imparting quality education in the faculties of arts, commerce, science, law, and management. With its uncompromising standards of excellence, our institution believes in imparting man making, character building, and value added education. The reaccreditation of the college as A grade by NAC and the status of college with potential for excellence conferred by the UGC bears eloquent testimony of its unshifting commitment to quality. Dr. Ambedkar College is truly a college like none other, and it is not surprising that it has won a very special and unique place in the academic, extracurricular, and sports landscape of Nagpur city, Vidarbha region, as well as in the central India. The strength of college students is approximately 5,000. Ladies and gentlemen, we have assembled here for the international webinar on India-China relations in post-COVID-19, which is organized by the Department of Economics, History, Pali Prakrit, and Political Science of a college. I, Dr. Mrs. Pratibha M. Syria, Principal of the college, welcome all the delegates, participants, and research scholars for this international webinar. I would like to extend my warm welcome to the eminent speakers of today's international webinar, Dr. Vijay Khare and Dr. Srinivas Khandewale. I am sure that today's international webinar would be very informative and beneficial to all the participants. I appreciate the efforts taken by our faculty members, Dr. G.K. Kamble, HOD Economics, Dr. M.D. Wankhede, HOD Pali Prakrit, Dr. A.D. Fuljile, HOD History, and Mrs. Vidya Chaurpagar, HOD Political Science, for organizing today's international webinar. Once again, on behalf of Dr. Ambedkar College, Diksha Bhumi, Nagpur, I welcome you all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
केलं
हाँ क्लिक करा सर नहीं एक मिनट मग presentation. Thank you, ma'am. Before starting the presentation of Professor Dr. Vijay Khare sir, I am giving his short introduction to you. Actually, there is no need of the introduction of these dignitaries, namely Dr. S.V. Khandewale sir and Dr. Vijay Khare sir. But the formal introduction of speakers is necessary. Therefore, I am going to introduce Dr. Vijay Khare first. His biodata is so prestigious and rich, which is full of national and international status. There is a very little scope for regional matters actually. Dr. Vijay Khare sir is a Fulbright scholar, social scientist awarded by UGC, former Dean Faculty Humanities, Professor and Head Department of Defense and Strategic Studies, Director International Center, Head Department of Ambedkar Studies, Director Yashwantrao Chauhan National Center of International Security and Defense Analysis, Savitribai Phule, Pune Vidyapit. He had awarded partial fellowship by the United Nations University, Tokyo, Japan. Dr. Khare was selected for the United Nations short course on hologrammatic terrorism, United Nations, Interregional Crime and Justice Research Institute, University of Rome, Italy. He completed an executive leadership program and advanced mediation and peacemaking program of the University of London, UK. Dr. Khare is a recipient of the prestigious Fulbright Fellowship at Washington, D.C., US. He had been awarded Erasmus Fellowship by the European Commission of Maastricht University, Czech Republic. Moreover, he received the Social Scientist Award for the research work under the Indo-French Social Scientist Exchange Program at the Foundation Maison des Sciences, DL Homi, Paris, France. He was being invited by US State Department under the International Visitors Program to attend the US Multilateral Diplomacy Program and visited several universities in the Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Texas, and New York under US state-sponsored program. He also completed academy leadership program at the Center for Study of Higher Education, Penn State University, USA. Regarding research, he received postdoctoral fellowship from University Grants Commission, UGC, India. At present, he is engaged in 4 international capacity building higher education projects with European Union, namely Tuning India, international collaborative projects with 7 European universities and 10 Indian universities. European projects partners are University of Deusto, Spain, University of Porto, Portugal, Groningen University, Netherlands, Trinity College, Dublin, Ireland, University of Bologna, Italy, Education for an Independent World, Belgium. International visits. While completing international projects and academic work, he visited nearly 40 countries. To mention, he visited USA, Taiwan, Ukraine, Israel, Germany, Poland, Romania, United Kingdom, Portugal, Czech Republic, Thailand, Spain, China, Sweden, Indonesia, Italy, Sri Lanka, Japan, France, Turkey, South Korea, Netherlands, Ireland, and so many others. Publication of Dr. Khare is like that. Dr. Khare's contribution to research publication is remarkable. One, 21 books in English and Marathi. 15 chapters in edited books are to his credit. 21 research papers in various reputed journals at international and national level. He had undertaken 22 research projects, including 14 joint international collaborative projects and national projects. He established first ever chair of excellence in the name of Marshal of the Air Force Arjun Singh in collaboration with Indian Air Force, Government of India. He established the first ever Center for John Dewey Studies in India at SPPU in collaboration with the University of Texas, USA. Introduced 5-year integrated MA-MSc course in national security, a first ever attempt in India, and MA in social and public policy courses, and various postgraduate diplomas in defense and strategic studies and Ambedkar studies. He is a professor of Department of Defense Strategic Studies. He is a director and head International Center SPPU from 20th September 2012 to till date. He is a director and head Department of Ambedkar Studies. He is a director of Yashwantrao Chauhan National Center of International Security and Defense Analysis, and he is a chairman of Board of Studies of Defense and Strategic Studies from August 2010 to till date. So this is his short biodata. Now, His, his topic of speech now is India-China relations in post-COVID-19. Now I request to Dr. Vijay Khare sir for his presentation. Dr. Vijay Khare sir.
Am I audible? Hello. Yes. Before going,
Yes, sir. You're audible, sir.
before going
Yes,
to
sir.
start my presentation, can you share my PPT? So,
हाँ सर कर सकते हैं आप देखिए सर ग्रीन बटन है शेयर स्क्रीन करके लास्ट में बॉटम में देखिए
हाँ एक सेकंड.
हाँ उससे शेयर कर दीजिए हाँ सर जिसको आप पीपीटी जो शेयर करें उसको सिलेक्ट करना है चालू कीजिए सर अपना पीपीटी
एक सेकंड. हाँ.
हेलो
काय होत नाही.
ओके सर
एक सेकंड. हाँ. एक फक्त एकच मिनिट.
मैं ये यूट्यूबर है ना
डेस्कटॉपला कसं जायचंय? हॅलो.
सर बोलो ना त्यांना क्वेश्चन विचारतो मला
हा सर.
तर डेस्कटॉपला आहे माझी पीपीटी. हॅलो.
हाँ बोला ना सर
माझी पीपीटी डेस्कटॉपला
आवाज
आहे.
नाही येत
ते
आहे.
कसं शेअर करायचं? हॅलो. आवाज येतो माझा?
सर तुम्ही जेव्हा शेअर येते ना सर आवाज येते तुमचा
हा तुमचं एकच जण कोणीतरी बोला.
पुढे नाही येत आहे.
मला
हॅलो. हा.
माझे पीपीटी शेअर करायची आहे.
हा.
हाँ
आता ती कशी करायची? म्हणजे जे
सर
सांगितलं.
तुम्ही एकदा पहिले कॅन्सल करा पीपीटी शेअरिंग कॅन्सल करा
एक सेकंड. हा.
हो हो आवाज येतो.
स्टॉप शेअर. सर.
सर एक मिनिट सर हाँ बोला
माझं एकच जण कोणीतरी बोला. माझी
हाँ मी
डेस्कटॉपला माझी पीपीटी ती कशी शेअर करायची?
सर पहिले पीपीटी ओपन करा सर तुमची
एक सेकंड. हा. आय एम नॉट दॅट मच फॅमिलियर बाबा. हा केले ते
ओपन केले आणि सर आता तुमच्या स्क्रीनच्या खाली शेअर म्हणून एक ऑप्शन आहे शेअर स्क्रीन म्हणून
याच्या झूम मध्ये का?
हा झूम मध्ये
सॉरी. हा जस्ट सेकंड कनेक्शन. हा शेअर स्क्रीन करतो.
हा शेअर स्क्रीन करा आणि तो ऑप्शन देतो काय सिलेक्ट करायचं तर पीपीटी सिलेक्ट करा सर शेअरिंग मध्ये
हा केली आता. आणि पीपीटी परफेक्ट. ओके आलं आता.
एक मिनिट सर ओके सर
आला?
त्याला हा आता ते शो करा पीपीटी शो करा आणि तुमच्या सेशन चालू करा सर
ओके जस्ट सेकंड. हा. ओके.
ओके सर
रेडी?
परफेक्ट
हो थँक्यू.
ओके सर
Okay, now I'm starting. Respected principal of the college, Dr. Pratibha Madam, or respected Khandelwal sir, organizer of this webinar, all department heads, and my dear friend, Dr. Kamble, and all teaching community. This is very important and contemporary topic you have chosen to understand the India-China relation in the context of present scenario or the post-COVID. we all aware that what would be future of higher education, what would be our uh, issues related to international peace and security, particularly when we talked about India's internal security as well as India's relation with China. What I'll do it in my presentation, I'll speak around 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll have a question answer. Let me set the outline of my presentation. I have divided the historical understanding of India-China relation as well as the present context. So my outline for the presentation divided in 3-4 parts. Particularly, first part I'll deal with the India-China border dispute. Second part, I'll talk about the economic and second part. Second part, I'll deal with the economic and geostrategic dispute with China. Then, what is the Chinese debt book diplomacy, China's debt trap policy? Then, what is the string of pearls, the kind of strategic policy implemented by Chinese from last several years, and what is a counter by Indian government in the name of string of flowers? Then Project Sagarmala, India Act policy, and then I'll switch for the present global India-China relation, post-COVID India-China relation, or uh, present or the post-COVID geopolitics and international relation. Let me, before going to start with the border dispute, being as a layman, as a common man, we need to understand how and COVID, or how post-COVID will be world, or post-COVID, what would be the world geopolitics, and what would be the international security order. Let me clear one thing: whether we had Galwan or in 16 June we had issues with the China, but in considering the nature of COVID, look at the global security order, look at the global system where you need to understand what kind of real challenges are. One is that first time in a global planet, uh, global community realized that the healthcare system is very important. Look at the first world, look at the human history, or even look at the last 200 years global power politics. Global power politics evolve around the strategic issues, particularly war strategy, tactics, and First World War, Second World War, then Cold War, and then weapons of mass destruction, and so on. So first time, up COVID-19 has given a lessons to the world community how and what is the necessity of healthcare system with the importance of military and economic capability. So look at the global power structure. When we discuss about such kind of issues, we always focus on weapons. Look at the Second World War, and after Second World War, the world was divided in two parts, namely in the name of Soviet Union and the capitalist democracy in the name of United States of America. And during the Cold War period, that was understanding by the developed countries that if someone is possessing weapons of mass destruction, I'm saying here weapons of mass destruction means weapons including the chemical weapon, biological weapons, and nuclear weapons. So those nation states possessing weapons of mass destruction, they can challenge each kind of issues. But slowly, Cold War somehow Cold War and deterrent policy implemented, and in 90s the collapse of Soviet Union changed the global power politics, and United States become a single unipolar world, a single unipolar world where China, France, Russia, even India tried to counter American hegemony. And then 9/11, that has the significance for global power politics. That is the first lesson for the country like United States of America, having weapons of mass destruction, having a military capability, having the economic capability. But 10 terrorists, when they attacked on Twin Towers and the Pentagon, then entire global community realized that having a weapons of mass destruction, it doesn't mean you can secure your border. So what is important here? Important is the concept of human security emerged from the period of 2001, I mean 9/11 2001, and then somehow uh, most of the developed countries focusing on the human security issue, and now again in the present form, importance of healthcare system is a very important to understand to each one. Now, my assumption, my understanding on the post-COVID issue, people are talking about a lot of issues talking about the India-China. In fact, after the 20 martyred, uh, when we showed on TVs, most of the Indians, they attacked on Chinese commodity, and they thought that while showing that kind of nationalism can counter China's hegemony in terms of in Asia's military balance or the power balance of power. But you need to understand first geographically, you need to understand the international dynamics, as well as you need to understand the historical dynamics relation between India and China. I'll come later on that issue. But when you talked about the post-COVID India-China relation, my understanding is that next 10-15 years, the balance of power will shift from uh, collective security to individual security. Means take example of when Trump came in power, he first time America is the first, he used the slogan. Then even each nation state talks about individual identity. Even when after COVID successfully managed by Spain and Italy government, and then there was a meeting in European Union. Spanish government and Italy government criticized the European Union that look, you have not considered as your brothers. You isolate Italy and Spain when Germany and other nation states are not supported to tackle the COVID-19. And now European Union, among European Union state, Italy and Spain government is criticizing the European Union role, and they said that they will be change the policy of Schengen visa, where Schengen visa is allowed to travel across the European Union. So they said that now we will think about our own individual. So what I am saying here, the post-COVID power politics particularly will focus from collective security system to individual security. So each one will focus on individual security. Even in India, look at the when we are sending our own laborers, particularly belongs from the downtrodden community, when they are migrating from Maharashtra to Uttar Pradesh or Uttar Pradesh to Bihar, uh, your own government not allowed to take them. So it means the individual security. Take a recent uh, the Delhi government resolution, then the Lieutenant Governor made a statement, and it was criticized that the Delhi government will not allow to outsider. So that kind of individual approach will focus at the international security environment, and this is a real challenge for the global community. Then third important point, in next 10-15 years, people are saying that you can counter China in a such way that China will not in a global security environment. But in my understanding, China and US remain a global power. There is no absolute power to alter the Chinese hegemony as well as the United States of America's hegemony. Look at the US economic capability, more than $20 trillion economy, as well as the Chinese is second largest and India is the third largest. So coming near future, this both power politics will be remain as a global power. Then while understanding Chinese military capability, China's economic capability, and China's future. I'll explain later on, but there are 6 important indicators you have to understand. You just not focus more about what the government of India is saying and what how media is talking about China. If you are banning the Chinese app, it doesn't mean that Chinese military capability you can countering. You have to understand the different dynamics while dealing with the China. My understanding, particularly, there are 6 indicators which are very important to understand. One is that how China will tackle with these 6 countries. So first is the Taiwan. What is the strategic relation in future? China apply with the Taiwan. Then second is the Tibet. Third is the Manchuria. Fourth is the Mongolia. Fifth is Hong Kong, and sixth is the Xinjiang province. So these are the 6 indicators. If Chinese government manage properly with these 6 indicators, then there will be no threat to Chinese hegemony. So this is understanding about post-COVID global power pivot to China. And lastly, before going to talk India-China border dispute, you need to understand the post-COVID has divided a global community in 2 groups. One is digital economy as well as the material economy. So the skill knowledge workers versus unskilled knowledge workers, that will be complete divide. You will take it in India as well as abroad. Even a person like me, I travel a lot, but I could not share my PPT in a time. So that means this is unskilled technique I have. So those who are manage the skills, they can, their survival will be fit, otherwise it would be difficult. So this will be a challenge for the understanding the global power politics. Then again, what I'm just going to start with the few understanding. The post-COVID international order, particularly, there will be a geostrategic and geopolitics implication. Next few months, there will be a zero migration from one place to other place. Then there will be a paradigm shift in population and demography, skill-based migration, particularly of white collar worker, they can get a benefit of that. Then there will be a financial crisis, as well as the what will happen after Trump, because he's going to face the election in November. And then after that, again, the it will be back to square policy will implemented in maybe in United States of America. Then the Asian commitment in alliance system, we still focusing on our alliance system. And what is the India's individual nation state will emerge as a narrow thinking. That is the main issue. This is now we have to understand 3 internal as well as the external dimension. For us, it would be very hard to restart the world economy as well as Indian economy. Particularly, there is a disruption in supply and demand. It would be very difficult to understand what kind of disruption. But look at the laborers issues, look at the migrant population across the globe, and even in India. Particularly when I talk across the globe, there is a set system for the social security, whereas in India, it is very difficult to define the social security. Somehow it is only the publicity point of view we make it the issue of social security, but on implementation ground, you will not find actual social security system on ground. In fact, our migrant laborers and our uh, laborers, particularly, they are victim from the caste system, as well as they are the victim of the prejudiced minds. Even then, whatever we have migrant laborers, most of them are from the downtrodden society, and that's why we have a different kind of issue, and this is a real problem for this from supply and demand. Now, entire global, even in India as well as the globe, travel, sports, hotel tourism will take time, and uh, positive and negative impact, but I will not cover. I'll just switch over of the what is India-China relation. Now, come to the India-China relation. You need to understand the India-China relation if you need to you to discuss the present issue of India-China relation. First, you have to understand the border dispute. What kind of border dispute we have with the China, and basically our border is there are three important sector. One is the western sector, which connect the Jammu and Kashmir as a Ladakh. Its total border area with China is 2,150 kilometers. Then in the middle sector, Uttarakhand, this is this middle sector, you'll not find any kind of practically dispute in Uttarakhand sector or the middle sector, because this is covered the high altitude advantage we have, and through high altitude advantage uh, we have our own capability to tackle with the Chinese. But that border is share only 625 kilometers, and in the eastern sector, this is we had issues related to eastern sector. We share with the Chinese border. It's 1140 kilometers in Arunachal Pradesh. So what is these are the three important in border line we share with China. One is in western sector, another is second is the middle sector, and third is the eastern sector. So total border line we are sharing with China is 3,488 kilometers. So India is the only country which has such kind of large border with the neighboring country, and India is the only country on global map where you will find two nuclear states are surrounding yeah, to our territory. Take example of Pakistan. Pakistan also weapons nuclear weapon state, although it is not recognized by world P5 state, but Pakistan and India both are the nuclear weapon state, and Chinese the officially recognized by United States, World United Nation, and China has a veto power in United Nation, and she is enjoying the P5 as well as the nuclear weapons status. So, considering the nature of global condition of China, India is the only country which shared longest border with China in three sectors: western sectors, middle sector, and eastern sectors. Is around 3,488 kilometer, and in this long border, we have a number of issues. We had a war with China in 62, and China defeated us. And then later on, we had a war with 3 days war with China in 67. We played a very important role, but unfortunately, no one talks about that war. And now everyone talks about emotional way, but that's not a story. Come to the how to understand the international relation and how to understand the India-China issue. Let me tell you that look at the our go back in 1950s. At that time, what was our philosophy? What was our understanding about to resolve the crisis with neighboring countries? Uh, we means it's not a blame to Nehru Gandhi era, because that time the global power politics was a different. Country like India was just got independence, and for us it was very difficult to find any kind of neighbor enemy, and we follow the principle which talks about the middle path of diplomacy. We talks about whatever issues will resolve across the table, negotiation, and resolve a crisis, peaceful coexistence in the world, as well as we also follow the non-alignment moment policy, and we have not joined any power politics, any group of superpower, neither with the US nor with the former Soviet Union. So that was our policy, and that policy particularly play important role for us from long period, and even today we have that kind of legacy to maintaining this that kind of structure. But in the other hand, you need to understand why Chinese is so aggressive. Mao did a cultural revolution in 1950s, and when Mao liberated the China, People's Republic of China, uh, he narrated the story about India and other Western world. They said that India is a British India, and it is a part of India is a stooge of imperialism. That word exactly he used, and he used the policy. That's a very important policy. He said that we call it is that hand palm and finger techniques. Mao's strategy against India, he said that India is nothing but a stooge of imperialism. He would use that, and he also narrated that it is under the UK or British India. So there was a policy, the Mao strategy of hand palm and finger technique. China said that Tibet is a right palm and the fingers are there. He said that Tibet is a palm, and the five uh, Himalayan states, including Arunachal Pradesh, Bhutan, Sikkim, Ladakh, and Tibet. These are the five fingers, and these fingers. He said that we need to conquer, and this is called a expansionist plan of Mao and concept of United China. So basically, you need to understand what is a Chinese ambition. Chinese ambition, when we talked about India's ambition, some extent people talks about Akhanda Bharat. So we always, most of the people talks about Akhanda Bharat, and gave a different kind of stories, but that would not possible for us. But the Chinese, they have their own strategic policy, and they want to have a united China, and for that they talk about such kind of hand palm and finger techniques, and due to that present crisis is emerging, and that is the main issue we need to understand. Now, when we talked about the India-China border dispute, why China is so aggressive in a border area? Most of the strategic experts, they discuss, but take example of military officers, they narrated the story to us. But while dealing with the historical document, you need to understand. Now, in a Western sector, China always used the cartographic aggression. Uh, Even in a South China Sea, China is using the cartographic aggression. Nine dash line is they have developed, and they're showing to us, and through that South China they wanted to control the global community. Now, in a Western sector, now first you need to understand in a Western sector, uh, particularly this is the cartographic aggression we need to understand. China showing maps and started aggression in neighboring countries. It's not that it's not only India. China is threatening to us. China is showing cartographic aggression, or showing historical maps and aggressive policy using against the neighbors. Now, we need to go to the back. We need to go back in a history where Johnson line and McDonald line, that was Johnson and McDonald line in 1865. Now, Johnson line, India accepts, and McDonald line, China accepts. This is two kind of controversy. Uh, Johnson, Ardek, just 2%. Johnson and Ardek is a cartographer. They made it a one line between India and erstwhile Tibet. And according to Johnson line, Aksai Chin is a part of India. Whereas Johnson line made it time, that time China was not aware, when because we all the Tibet was the separate separate country, and it was a Tibet empire, and that Johnson line uh, when made it, that time China was not informed by the British India, and Kashmir king informed by the British, and Kashmir king Saidullah fort constructed on Johnson line by the Kashmir king, but unfortunately that fort was not used by the Kashmir kingdom, and not informed to the China. Now, India, India's Aksai Chin present is China's Xinjiang or the Xinjiang province. When it is this kind of issue come in 78, China reconquered Xinjiang and started administering it, because what has happened from 1865 to 1878, Kashmir king was not took a part of that area, and then in 1878 China reconquered that area and started uh, administrated. And then in 1892, they started erecting a boundary markers near the Karakoram. And 1893, Chinese official gave the maps to the British Consul General George McCarthy. So McCarthy-MacDonald line find place the proper Aksai Chin in Chinese territory. So that is why when we talked about McCarthy-MacDonald line, China accept, whereas India accept is a Johnson line. And this is a real dispute. And then the British started using the Johnson line as official demarcation, where Chinese used the McCarthy-MacDonald line. And many of the Chinese official sources also to the Johnson line in their official document. Now, before understanding this border dispute, you must understand what is the real crisis between India and China. The war between communism and capitalism. I said earlier, the Mao said India is a stooge of imperialism, and he wanted to spread a communism in a different way. So go back again in the 18th century. Again, here main player as Russia and United Kingdom. So Russia wanted to expand its territory up to Tibet, and whereas the British wanted expansion territory with the Tibet as well as the China. And British India, no, they don't want to have any kind of direct border with the China. So they wanted to create a buffer state between China and India, and that is the Tibet, like Afghanistan. So the Britishers, it was a game. This was a great game by the two powerful Western powers, particularly Russia and British that time, Great Britain. So they created such kind of issues between India and China, and they created a buffer state between India and the China. Now, in 1914, there was a Simla Accord. When we talk about Simla Agreement, we just talked about only a Simla Agreement of 1972 with the Pakistan. But that is before that we had a very important agreement, that is the Shimla Agreement in 1940. And in that Shimla Agreement, the representative from China, Yuan Chen, Prince of Sikkim, representative of Tibet, representative from Great Britain, Henry McMahon, Britishers wanted to fix the boundary with Tibet and India. And Tibet, I said earlier, British wanted Tibet should remain as a buffer state. And for creating a buffer state, they called the Simla Accord. And then when they created a buffer state between India and China and Tibet, then China walk out. Initially, Chinese representative accept this kind of treaty, but later on China walk out. Then three-party agreement was not signed because this Shimla Agreement basically China, Tibet, and British Indian. But it was not signed because China walk out from that agreement, and British India, the agreement signed in a Simla Accord, that was the British India and the Tibet, not China. So that's Chinese argument. So the China said we have walk out from 1914 Simla Agreement, and what Britishers did it here, you must understand what they did it. In a Shimla Agreement, what Britishers did it, Tibet divided in two parts. One part is outer Tibet, and one is a inner Tibet. So they gave it the inner Tibet to China, and outer Tibet is part of Tibet. So Tibet divided in two parts in Shimla conference or accord, and inner Tibet given to the China and outer Tibet given to the India. Then Chamdor River, it's a line where they divided. The Chamdor River is the place where they divided Tibet, and uh, Chinese are arguing that this is third party was not signed, and Tibet and British India line, they call it is a McMahon line, and Chinese they refuse to accept this line, and China claimed Tibet is not an independent country, it is a suzerainty, not an independent country. So those students from political science, they understand what is the difference between sovereignty and suzerainty, and Tibet was a suzerainty, it's not an independent country, and that was the claim by Chinese. And during that time, what happened, First World War just started, and British India wanted the support from China, and that issue was not discussed properly, and that issue is still pending, and that is the real problem. Now, when we talked about uh, China, then in 1949, there was a same when Mao conquered Tibet, then he came to Tibet and he signed an agreement, a 7-point agreement with the Tibetan uh, uh, government, and then he put a condition that China will preserve the Tibetan culture, and Tibetan people will have autonomous, and also Chinese also accept that the Tawang region, they call it the South Tibet, they will also discuss. So this was a happen, and then when we had a agreement with Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai on 29th April 1954, you need to understand that that period was a Cold War period, and the entire power structure was divided in two parts, and particularly nation state like India as well as other those nation states got independence after Second World War. They need to join with any other bloc, either with the Soviet bloc or the US bloc. So most of the country join the Soviet bloc or the uh, US bloc. You take example of Seattle, Santo, Warsaw, such kind of military agreement was there was a military agreement, but or a military alliances, but India chose a separate, different path. India chose a non-alignment path, and through non-alignment, India wanted to give a new kind of principles at a global level, that is a peaceful coexistence. That was the main core of the non-alignment movement. Then uh, particularly China, when we had an agreement in 1950 Panchashila agreement, China placed a condition before India that if India is going to sign a India and China is going to sign a Panchashila agreement, then India must accept that Tibet is an integral part of China, and the Indian government accept that, and then this then when we accept Tibet as integral part of China, then later period, again in 1959, there was a incursion by Chinese in a Tibet, and we gave a asylum. We know 7-point agreement violated by Chinese, and Dalai Lama took asylum in India, and from that day to till date we are giving asylum. And then when we gave asylum to Dalai Lama in India, in Dharmashala, then China wanted to took a revenge, because Chinese government said that India violated the Panchashila agreement. They said that the Dalai Lama is a separatist leader, and India gave asylum to Dalai Lama, and violating a Panchashila agreement. Then suddenly there was an attack by Chinese on 10th October 1962, and on 10th November 1962, there was a unilateral ceasefire declared by Chinese, and then that is called a line of control. Wherever they said that there's a line of control, where the ceasefire declared, they stop that area and they call it the line of control. So we need to understand what happened from 1949 to 62. Basically, Chinese philosophy talks about the salami strategy policy. Now, this is what is a salami strategy? The small steps, and go ahead. Means one step ahead, two step back, one step ahead, two step back, and on that line, China is growing from last 5 decades, not at militarily but as economically, and that is we need to understand. Now, second argument about you need to understand uh, what is our economic and geostrategic disputes. Uh, One Belt, One Road or Belt Road Initiative. This is a very mega project by Chinese. Basically, this is a project came in their mind that they wanted to show that military capability, economic capability, and historical. They wanted to show the historical legacy. So they wanted one united China. And don't forget that the kind of exploitation by the Japanese and other forces did it in China. This they call it 100 years of humiliation, and they wanted to take a revenge, not from India but across the globe, because particularly Japanese, and you all aware that the 100 years of humiliation is the different history for China. And now Chinese government is coming with that ambition that we need to control the world in a different way, where we can take a revenge, not in an economic way but in culturally as well as the militarily. And so that is their policy. And this policy, one belt one road or belt initiative road initiative, came. Basically, this is a land based highway. It goes with Central Asia to Europe, and it was declared in 2012. And particularly they wanted to revival of the maritime Silk Road. You all aware that that was the Silk Road. From historical is available, they have that kind of evidences, and Silk Road was played important role during ancient period, and they wanted to create a same kind of new economic one belt one road. And China already spent $200 billion, and it is covering entire South and Southeast Asia, as well as linking the Central Asia as well as in Europe. Now, in between one belt, one road, for our security point of view, what is important, you need to understand our CPAC, that is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. It is going through Gilgit, Pakistan area, which is Indian area captured by uh, Pakistan, means particularly, and that was the area. This is CPEC is Pakistan game changer. Basically, what Pakistan feels that, and we all aware that enemies are friends. So basically, Pakistan is more inclination towards China, because uh, Pakistan could not stand before us in terms of our military capability, in terms of economic capability, or any kind of so what she needs the support of China, she needs support of Iran, and then counter to India's strategic objective. But that is part. But this CPEC is another game changer for Pakistan and game changer for other countries, but threat for the India. Now, India is not against of any connectivity. Project must based on international norms, good governance, equality, rule of law, openness and transparency, must respect sovereign territorial integrity. Unfortunately, when CPAC is declared, China and Pakistan, they are going through our territory, which is occupied by them, Gilgit and Baltistan, and this is our territory, but they are going and they're constructing the CPAC, and this is really a challenge for us. Now, people talk about CPAC, but before that, one must understand why we celebrated Indian Navy Day. There was Operation Trident on 4th December 1971. That was the important operation during the war, 1971 war, and the first time Indian Navy permanent attacked on Pakistan Navy, that is INS Nipat in Karachi, and they destroyed the uh, each means everything there, and it was a irreversible damage to Pakistan by Indian Navy on 4th December, and that was the reason we are celebrating the 4th November is a Indian Navy Day. Then that was a Karachi was a port where they took place that other kind of activities, including transportation and other things. Then Pakistan find alternate port, the Gwadar port reconstructed, which is located Gulf of Oman and entrance of Persian Gulf. So you are now talk just 3-4 days back. You must heard about that why how Iran is now not sharing information, or how Iran is dropping India in a Chabar port. Chabar port, I'll talk later on that, but Chabar and Gwadar, these are the two ports are very important strategically as well as geo-economically. And in a Gwadar port, basically Pakistan wanted to, they wanted to relocate it, reconstruct, and it is close to Strait of Hormuz. I don't have that map, but I wanted to show, but you can find it there. And it is close to Strait of Hormuz, and this is basically uh, China. What China is using? China is using bullet and wallet game. This is a Chinese philosophy, bullet and wallet game. First, they're giving arms ammunition as well as the financial help to the less developing countries, including China. And Gwadar and Chabar are a geopolitical launch pad and can alter strategic balance in the region. This is the real issue for us. Now, earlier, Chabar as a port in Iran, Indian government wanted to construct a rail and would link with up to the Afghanistan, and we can start because present road is going through the. If you want to go to Pakistan by road, Afghanistan, you need to cross the Pakistan territory, and we from last several years we are not. Maintaining the peace with the Pakistan, and then we chose the Chabar port. But look at the Iran government. Look at the US strategy against Iran. Unfortunately, government of India also trapped in between when US declare a economic sanction against Iran. Then Indian government also stopped to get oil from Iran, and Iran is in a critical phase. And considering the present time, China is the best friend for Iran, and then China is signed agreement, a $400 billion agreement. China next 50 years, China will supply arms ammunition to Iran, and next 50 years, Iran will supply crude oil to China. That was the treaty signed, and then on the one condition China placed before Iran, that Iran government should drop India in a Gwadar Chabar port, and they did it. Although they knew clarification coming at, but they did it and they dropped the India. And this is a strategic balance in the region. It means a geopolitical launchpad. Chabar is very important for us, but unfortunately, we failed to manage with the Iran. Now, Gwadar port is a close to Strait of Hormuz, allow China to access the Indian Ocean. Then China can monitor US and Indian naval activity in Persian Gulf as well as Arabian Sea, while proxy Pakistan control energy routes on it. Then Chabar port gateway to Afghanistan, Central Asia, Russia, and beyond. So this is the two important geostrategic important along with the CPAC, and we need to understand the Chinese intervention in this area. Then third is the debt book diplomacy, or China's debt trap. You must heard about the Trojan horse movie, or you must seen that Trojan horse movie, where how they use the horse to conquer the enemy. But in a debt book diplomacy, look at the Vanuatu is a small country. Chinese spending 64 million US dollar. In a Myanmar, China is spending $87.2 billion. In Sri Lanka, Hambantota, Djibouti, already they develop a military base. And in Pakistan, there's no means most of the things is now in the Chinese commodity, uh, Chinese commodity in Pakistan. So What is the debt book diplomacy or China's debt trap policy? Particularly, China is attracting a small countries. Even today, in a COVID period, China is supplying 128 countries pharmaceutical as well as the COVID equipment. Even in US, although US is saying that we don't need a Chinese articles or we don't need a Chinese help. But even today, China is supplying most of the medical equipment, not only US, but the 127 countries. And even in India, in a pharmaceutical sector, we are dependent on 60% are raw materials in a pharmaceutical sectors coming from the China. And tomorrow, if we ban the pharmaceutical sectors, what we are getting rupees 15 or 20 paracetamol, that will cost more than 100 rupees. So this is a real issue. This is a real challenge. Even when we talked about our economic transaction, from 1917 to 2020, our import from China has been increased 14.5 to 32.4. So this is a new kind of a transaction we have with the Chinese. And here, while giving the loans to the small countries, China is trying to controlling our hegemony across the globe, particularly less developed countries. Now, you need to understand the what is the string of pearls. Basically, this is a official. There is no official policy on a string of pearls. But if you look at the map, pearls means ports. Basically, those are the ports that the slowly India is covers the string. Means in Indian Ocean, what are the pearls? The ports. Particular take example of the pearls is a geopolitical theory related to potential Chinese intention in Indian Ocean region. So this is a whatever ports are in Indian Ocean. It refers to network, the Chinese military and commercial facility, and relation along with the lines of communication which extend Chinese mainland and to Sudan. So in Indian Ocean, number of small ports are there. So Chinese is covering that, and that is a real challenge to us how to counter the China. So when you talked about the China, we are not just only focused on the India-China border dispute. China is covered by India in all way, including northern and other sector, including the southern sector. So it is real challenge for us how to understand the China. Now, I said one road initiative is the visual evidence for Chinese global ambition. The billions of dollar China is spending on that, and China wanted to become a global power with the single hegemonic power. And the string pulse is the strategy for Chinese domination. The string pulse is nothing but is a Chinese domination, and there is a submarines game. China is not just reviving the ports, but they are placing the different submarines so she can directly counter the India's security. Then, what is the counter strategy of India? India is not country like what we had in 1962. Let me clear one thing. Although we have 40% people or 30 plus percent people, they are staying below the poverty line. They most of the issues are economic issues, cultural issues, different differences among each other. But what kind of military capability we had in 1960, that has not in 2020. We changed a lot. We changed our policy, and we are changing our strategic ambition also. So we government of India is countering China's asserting policy while dealing with China's asserting itself. First, India signed a quadrilateral agreement, that is India, Australia, Japan, and US. We are trying to quadrilateral strategic partnership with these four countries. And from 92 onwards, we are using a Malabar exercises. So basically, this is naval exercise with the Japan, US, Australian Navy. And in future, why we are conducting such kind of exercises? Because in future, if China attack any kind of mm, Indian submarine or any security issue places, then all country can be sure. So we conducting a exercises, Malabar exercise in 1992, trilateral naval exercise, and we also have a exercise with the Australia and Singapore. So this is our strategy. But in apart from this naval exercises, Malabar exercises, we have a project called a Masum, and through the Indian Indira Gandhi National Center of the Arts, with the help, with the support of archaeological survey, we also giving a different map, cartographic map to the with other countries, and how China is not China. We are countering the Chinese claim. Then Project Sagarmala, also ambitious projects initiated by Government of India, where port modernization and port development, port connectivity enhancement, port-led industrialization, coastal community development. This kind of strategy we are countering to tackle with the uh, Chinese. Then again, lookist policy to actist policy. During the time of Narasimha government, we have started the lookist policy. Then this government started the actist policy for through economic cooperation and our strategic cooperation uh, with the most of the Southeast Asian countries. And we for string of pearls, we are countering the string of flowers from 2015. Basically, the string of flowers talks about to develop infrastructure in different countries, different island in Mauritius, then the Seychelles and other countries, and we are trying to counter the China through this way. Now, come to the China-Pakistan axis. Uh, I said the enemies are friend on that line. China-Pakistan close together, and whenever anything happen, probably in case if there is a war, we need to be prepared to two-front war with China, one Pakistan. Then Aksai Chin occupied by China in 1962. 1963, Pakistan gave a Saksham Valley, and then the basic cause of the present crisis, particularly during COVID period, entire world was busy, but Chinese used the different strategy and they came in Indian territory. Basic cause is that India rejected the CPAC and OBR. One Belt Road we rejected because that was not road as a that project was not on based on transparency. It is not a rule of law. This is against the national international environment. Then CPSC also it is our territory, and through our territory they wanted to construct the route. So China Pakistan axis is the real challenge to us. Then apart from this geostrategic, economic, political, we need to understand the river dispute also. Now, river dispute, Brahmaputra originates in Tibet, in Tibet known as Yarlung Sangpo, and it flows down to India and further enters in Bangladesh. So where is joins Gangas and into the Bay of Bengal. So particularly in Brahmaputra, nowadays China is not doing. China constructed a number of hydroelectrical project on that land on that river. But in future, because upper region is China originated in the Tibet, and Tibet is controlled by China, and in future probably China can divert entire Brahmaputra water because we are in a lower region. And same thing with Pakistan. If government of India is trying to divert Indian water, I mean different water canals, which is going to Pakistan. So same thing will happen here. So river dispute will be a future issue between India and China. Trade and economy, again, huge trade deficit. I said in import, we are importing 34.5%, near about 34.5%, but our export is very less, whereas in China is playing important role. Our huge trade deficit with China, and whatever we use the policy made in China, made in India, made in Skill India, but China may flood our market particularly the kind of our Skill India policy. It is not a policy, but it is some extent it is a failed policy for Indian manufacturers. Now, let me tell you. Oh, oh, oh. Just a second. Hello. Hello. Yeah. Now, let me. Hello. Let me come to the last point. Is any possibility of war? I when you talked about as a possibility of war, now 20 soldiers martyred in a Galwan Valley, and if that could happen with the Pakistan, probably it could be a like a third world war situation. When we mean the Pakistan, when there was a bomb blast before election, the kind of media and the kind of political parties and the even Indian people uh, came on street and used the slogan against Pakistan. But what happened? Why there's no why there is not what happened? Why there is no voice against China? Means most of the only we are banned 59 apps. Hello, we have banned the 59 apps, and that apps only basically we just ban the apps. Now, China and US will not confront to each other for two reasons. US may use India as a basketball, like a basketball. They can just use India as a basketball, but China and US will not confront to each other. Two reasons. One, US Navy or US forces cannot attack on mainland China because Chinese has a huge population or large army, and China will not attack on US on one reason, that is Chinese naval capability is not superior. So this is one important. Look at the history of US naval. From last 100 years, US constructed a very good naval infrastructure, whereas aircraft carrier China constructed in 80s onwards, and there is no tested that aircraft carrier is not tested in any warfare. So Chinese naval capability is very less. So considering this issue, probably this both will not go for war. Then what is the future? Particularly, in my point of argument, that look at the present power politics. In present scenario against China, there was 7+3+1 international group has come up, anti-China. That is a D11, means 7 G7 country plus 3 India, South Korea, and Australia, and then plus Russia. So they wanted to have one group. Then D10 particularly talked about the 5G equipment. Just 2 days back, United Kingdom refused to use a Chinese 5G techniques. So most of the developed world is going to tackle with the Chinese commodity, particularly in science and technology. Now, last point I'll cover, and then I'll stop here. From last 7 decades of India-China strategic cooperation, when we talked about Wuhan meeting or Wuhan spirit, Wuhan is a place where that is coronavirus is spread across the globe. But before that, we talked about Wuhan spirit. From last several decades, India-China balance, strategic balance maintained by the each competitive nature with China, as well as the we also talks about the economic nationalism. Uh, India is not only India, but the country is what critical supply. Particularly when you talked about India as opportunity to set up alternative supply line. Can it possible for India to develop alternative supply line to counter China? Because for India, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and Taiwan, they are coming together. And how we diversify to tackle the Chinese supply chain policy. So that would be one challenge before us. But before that, we need to ask ourselves what is Indian manufacturers, why they are not setting up the companies properly, and what are their challenges. Then next question, can we rethink of China? World will rethink about the China. It's not possible for uh, world, because I said earlier, China is everywhere. Means take example of Australia is aggressive against the China, but 500% commodities from China supply from the China to the Australia. So these are the issues, particularly when you talk about the China. Now, lastly, I'll talk about China's issue, what happened in Galwan, what happened in present, particularly uh, the uh, the recent strategic partnership, recent strategic issues. Let me summarize in a very short way. Country like India, it is so easy for using the emotional slogan, but practically when you are tackling with the country like China, which has military capability, which has economic capability, which has one of the best kind of technology, we need to maintain a balance, and that balance can be managed through the willpower. It's not like that to make a slogan against the China. And you all aware that we have our own limitation when our prime minister went in Galwan or Ladakh, and when he talks about China, he has not used the word of China, he used the expansionism. So that is the international pressure we have. Some extent, the pressure strategy and technique is there. And in considering the nature, I'm not expecting any kind of war with China in future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your excellent presentation. It was really noteworthy and inspirative. Now, there is a question answer session. One question is asked by Pawan Paraspagar. I think that which is already covered in your presentation. His question is how this relationship between China and India in pandemic affects Indian economy, especially manufacturing industry and import-export industry. Any more question?
Shall I respond now?
Yeah.
Basically, in a present time, I said earlier, 65% pharmaceutical industry is based on Chinese supply. In our electronic gadget, are most of the commodities, means 60%, more than 45 to 50% electronic gadget comes from China. Pharmaceutical, even agriculture pump, it comes from China. Even in cement, it comes from China. And import is very high. So and there is no other alternative. The government of India is talking about Atmanirbhar, but where is the money? This is a look at the statistical data. Whatever money we have, that money is just we are reshuffling to each other. Look at government of India is taking money from RBI, and that money is not enough to counter the present challenges, particularly when you talked about the Chinese commodity. Next.
Thank you, sir. Any question from participants?
Hello, sir. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
I'm Dr. Vrishali Randhir. Hello, sir.
Okay.
I want to ask question. In this situation, what are the strong points of India? Hello.
Hello. Hello.
In this panic situation, what are the strong points of India?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Question from sir. Question from Vishali Randhive. That question is.
I got it. I got it. I
You got it.
it.
Okay. You shall explain.
In such panic situation, what are the strong points of India? Indian people are very strong, but the government is not strong. So Indian people of the will is very strong, but the government strategy. Look at the last 17 to 20 years, means 2017 to 2020, why we have increased our import from 14% to 32%. What was the gimmicks in that? And if you understand that in very well, then you can counter to the Chinese, because suddenly what was the why government of India officials, mean the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping, they met to each other in a span of 4 years, 6 years, 18 times, and they increase the trade. And suddenly what has happened? So you need to understand between the line, and then you will understand what is the strong points for India. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Any question? Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Khare sir. Then we will start second session, whose theme is the future of Indian economy in post-COVID-19 with reference to income and employment. And our resource person is Professor Dr. Srinivas Khandewale sir. Before his presentation, I am going to his brief introduction. He received a gold medal in economics from RTM Nagpur University. He was a professor in PGTD campus, Department of Economics, RTM Nagpur University, Nagpur. He is eminent economist and renowned scholar of the country. His studies areas are micro and macroeconomics, government's policies, programs and various schemes, State Reorganization Commission, separate state of Vidarbha, Marxist and Ambedkarite philosophy, literature and movement. He visited and contributed in international conferences which were organized in Cuba and Sri Lanka. He was the only India's representative. He submitted the number of research projects to ICSSR and UGC, New Delhi. Recently, he submitted the research project to Indian Council for Social Sciences Research, New Delhi, and its title was Sectoral and Regional Disparities in the Economic Growth of Maharashtra, with special reference to Vidarbha. He was a director of MBA department of RTM Nagpur University. He is a pioneer of Dr. Ambedkar Thought Department of RTM Nagpur University, Nagpur. Now, he is the director of RS Ruikar Institute of Labor and Socio-Cultural Studies, Nagpur. Today's his topic of representation is the future of Indian economy in post-COVID-19 with reference to income and employment. Now I request to Dr. S.V. Khandewale sir for presentation. सर खंडेवाले सर तुम्ही अनम्यूट करा.
आवाज येतोय आता?
हा हा आता येतोय, आता येतोय.
आवाज येतोय?
होय सर येतोय. ओके ओके सर कंटिन्यू करा.
हॅलो,
हा कंटिन्यू
हॅलो.
करा सर. हॅलो
आवाज येतोय?
आवाज येतोय,
हा
आवाज येतोय.
हा
हा
हा ठीक आहे, ठीक
हा ठीक आहे सर.
आहे. हा. Dear friends, today a very important problem is being discussed on this webinar, and the problem is India-China relations in post-COVID-19. Obviously, we have not crossed the corona problem world over, and it may take about 4 to 6 months from here to ward off the corona problem. And then post-corona period will start. That means reasonably after the financial year 2021, the present subject will be applicable, and we shall be discussing the situation that arrives that time. In the analytical language, we call it that the present corona problem is the immediate reference, and the post-corona problem will have two time dimensions. One will be medium term, that is in 1 to 2 years what is likely to happen, and long term, after 2-3 years, what is likely to happen. So there are three time dimensions that are related to the present problem. If we take the immediate situation as it exists today, and first quarter of financial year of the year 2020-21, that is April, May, June, the results have been out as to what is happening in Indian economy and what is happening in Chinese economy. So far as Indian economy is concerned, the results have been that due to lockdowns, continuous lockdowns, production has almost been halted, stopped. Factories and construction establishments and offices, and therefore the output has contracted, reduced, declined for the first 3 months. It is during the monsoon session that nobody expects the production to be started immediately. Even if you look at the TV in the evening, you will find that some workers who had gone to their villages, migrant workers, are trickling to Bombay or other Mahanagar or major cities, because they say that adequate work and food supply is not there in villages. Therefore, we are coming to the mega cities. Now, the question in the bigger cities is how to start the production with a small number of workers available. What it means is that the production may be started in factories, establishments, offices, etc., but it may not be in full swing. And if production is not in full swing, we do not receive adequate volume of production, adequate value of production, adequate employment to workers, and therefore it goes on in a subdued fashion, in a less than optimal fashion, less than normal fashion. And therefore, day before yesterday, the governor of Reserve Bank of India gave his assessment of the Indian economy at the banking convention of State Bank of India. What he said is that the GDP growth, that is growth of national product, during 2021 financial year would be in the negative zone. That means below zero. That means no positive growth, but even if it grows, there will be below zero growth, and that is known as negative zone. In that negative zone, some production is continued. But what the governor says is very important. He says that there are some signs that normalcy may return. Some signs, because if workers are available in whichever sector, because of unlocking, the production is allowed to go on. Even day before yesterday, in many cities, the collectors and state governments have allowed production to go on and other activities not to go on, like trade and other things. In Pune, you must have seen that production in factories is allowed, but hotels and mega gatherings are not allowed. Therefore, some sort of economic activity will go on, but what the governor says is very important, that the COVID outbreak, that is corona outbreak, is the worst health and economic crisis in 100 years. And therefore, the world has not seen a combined health crisis with economic crisis. When production starts, when production stops, it is a stoppage of employment, income, the consumption levels are low, and there is an economic crisis. So the Reserve Bank governor says that it is a combined health and economic crisis, worst in 100 years. It also means that if the crisis is worst in 100 years, the solutions and remedies we try also must be new in the economic history of 100 years. He says, and I underline it, that there are a string of uncertainties, which means there is a large number of uncertainties in the supply chain. That means production from farm to factory, from factory to showrooms. These are supply chains. There are uncertainties. Nobody knows what will happen in the next month, next 2 months or so, and therefore nobody is willing to take decisions. That is the meaning of economic uncertainty. So there are uncertainties in the supply chain. There are uncertainties in the demand factors. There are uncertainties in the banking sector, and all of these will have impact on the employment of the people and income of the people, which is the topic of today's discussion. He says that there are unprecedented negative consequences. What has happened due to corona? What has happened due to lockdowns? Unprecedented. Never it has happened. Unprecedented negative consequences for output, jobs, and well-being of the people. All these have been reduced. It is the governor of Reserve Bank saying, therefore, all other media which give information in one way or the other, we must underline that this is Reserve Bank of India giving us authentic information that unprecedented negative consequences are operating on production side, on jobs and well-being of the people. He says, however, as a governor of the Reserve Bank, that his job is, and the common job of the government also is, to restore confidence of the people in the system, preserve financial stability of the market, revive the growth process, and recover the economy in a stronger manner. So these are the realities of Indian economy today as expressed by the governor of Reserve Bank of India. What are the realities of China today? This morning's newspapers have reported that China has reported positive 3.2% growth in GDP as compared to 3 months of last year. They call it year on year. 3 months of this year, 3 months of last year. So as compared to last year's economic growth, China has reported positive 3.2% growth of GDP, and therefore it has given a surprise to the world economy that when all other economies are experiencing a negative aspect of economic growth, China has done it, and China has shown it that its economy has grown by 3.2%. If we compare India and China, the Reserve Bank governor has said that during the whole year, the Indian economy is likely to be in the negative zone. This has also been expressed by the rating agencies like CRISIL, like CARE Ratings, and others. Therefore, by all calculations, Indian economy compared to last year would be in the negative economic zone, that is growth, output, employment, income, etc. Therefore, a comparison between Indian and economic situation as of today, maybe temporary comparison, factors can change, is like this, that Indian economy is operating in a negative zone. Chinese economy has shown that its output has increased by 3.2%. How it happens, how it can happen in India, we can discuss later. Various scholars have said that economic policy, especially the foreign trade policy, the industrial policy, and diplomatic policy are three elements which need to be taken together. Because diplomacy decides what type of trade will be there. Trade decides what type of industrial development will be there in the country. And industrial development decides what type of employment and what type of income levels will be experienced by the people. They say that in India, these three policies have not been combined together effectively. That is why we are getting into problems. Relatively, in China, they have combined together the foreign trade policy, the diplomacy, and the industrial policy. So it needs to be considered and reconsidered in what manner we can combine the economic policies with foreign trade policies, etc. A recent note on some mobile post is there, news, that Iran has signed a contract with China for developing the Chabhar project or the port. India had signed development of Chabhar project with Iran. But the report says, news report says, that for the last 4 years, India has not contributed any funds to that project. And as a result, Iran has cancelled the contract. Now, here is an example of foreign policy, industrial policy, and economic policy. That if the report is correct, India has been thrown out of the Iranian project and China has got into the Iranian project. And therefore, it is very necessary (30 years) means from 1991, when liberalization started, WTO was signed. India became a member of WTO. Later, China also became a member of WTO. China acquired the world market for its own products. we have been suffering from minus foreign exchange. That means exports less and imports more. China has gained foreign exchange surplus during the 30 years, and it has used the surpluses for its own internal development. So if two countries join the world trade process at the same time, how does it happen that China gains foreign exchange surplus and India is suffering from foreign exchange losses? It is because of foreign direct investment that we get the foreign exchange, and therefore the situation gets going. But the fact remains, one scholar has pointed out that in 1990, when the liberalization process started, Indian per capita income, that is per individual income, was higher than Chinese per capita income in 1990. And in 2019, what is the result? China's per capita income is 5 times that of Indian per capita income, per person income, which means that during the period from 1990 to 2019, China has acquired the economic development process to such an extent that per individual income, per capita income of China is today 5 times that of per capita income of India. It has used it. Now, the second very important factor, which has been brought about in the discussion, that India continues to export to a large extent raw materials and continues to import finished products. Raw materials have a low price, we call it low valuation, and imported finished products have high value. And therefore, our exports are low valued exports and our imports are high valued exports. We have a negative trade balance. Payments are more, receivables are less. Some people have called it a colonial pattern of trade. When we were under British rule, we were exporters of raw materials and importers of finished products. The same thing has continued from 1991 to till today. And therefore, some people call it a colonial pattern of foreign trade, where a developing country suffers from low value exports and high value imports. What has happened to China? At the time of liberalization process, China had raw materials exported. But after joining World Trade Organization and starting its own industrialization process, China built up industrial capabilities, that is production, to such an extent that very soon India started importing high value industrial projects, high value electronic materials from China. And therefore, during the last 30 years, what China has done is to consolidate the manufacturing sector of China to such an extent that the world over people are importing machinery, high value electronics from China. Take an example. Just now we had a discussion last fortnight that India has stopped many industrial contracts with China, and India has declared a policy of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The expectation government of India has is that all the manufacturers should stop importing machinery from China. In reality, Indian manufacturing has been so designed now that they import the machines from China and they assemble the goods here. For example, the Bajaj two-wheelers. The chairman of Bajaj company said that it is not possible to stop Chinese imports because Bajaj company imports engines made in China and then assembles them into the Bajaj scooter in India. They cannot immediately replace the Chinese engines. Therefore, the manufacturing sector in India has not been developed during the last 30 years, whether it is the, the limitation of the government policy or limitation of the corporate sector policy or whatever it is. The net result is that China has developed a dependable, reliable quality of their products, the services they render, and therefore Indian manufacturers say that it is not immediately possible to stop Chinese imports into India. Otherwise, the manufacturing sector will suffer very much. The MSME sector has said, micro, small, and medium industry sector, MSME sector has said that if we stop imports from China, then MSME sector cost of production will increase by 30% because we have not produced those machines, those designs, those electronical goods in India. We import it from China, we finish them here, and we give it to the assembling finishing industry. And therefore, Indian manufacturing is heavily dependent upon Chinese imports of goods. So to immediately say that we will become Atmanirbhar and we should stop all imports from China, the business sector says it is not realistically possible. What is the meaning? The meaning is that during the last 30 years of WTO, liberalization of economic policy in India, we have not given or we have not paid attention to the direction of trade, direction of industrial production, direction of foreign policy, and therefore as a combined result, India finds itself in a difficult position, whereas China finds itself in a dominating position. Many scholars have accepted it. The next important thing that China has done is when it found that international markets in a free trade regime, WTO regime, though China is selling throughout the world, there are recessions, slow demand throughout the world, and therefore China found itself in a difficult situation while exporting their goods. Therefore, China changed the developmental model and its own economic policy. They said we must depend, China must depend upon the local Chinese demand for continued economic growth. Again, I repeat, China decided that China must not depend upon the export growth for economic development. Export growth should be there, but the basic sustenance, basic power of economic growth should be the domestic demand from Chinese people. We have not been able to do it. For that purpose, what did China do? That is the most difficult problem that we are coming to. What did China do? China reduced the economic inequalities of income in China. And China offered fullest possible employment to its own people. So near full employment to the people and very satisfactory income levels of the people. On these two factors, the Chinese domestic market is growing. What did we do in India? We did not follow the employment path. Whatever migrant labor comes from rural area to large cities for production, the living standards of the people and wage standards of the laborers are below minimum wage. Their living standards are slum dwelling, and therefore even when the GDP growth of India has been very high for some time, it has not percolated into economic equality between rural and urban, between agricultural and industrial wages. And the wages have continued to be low. Economic standards have continued to be low during all these 30 years of liberalization. Whereas China has did both the things. It has increased the employment for its own people, and it has given satisfactory living standards or satisfactory income levels to its own laborers. And therefore, China has built up a strong domestic demand within China. And why we are facing a negative zone of demand, negative zone of industrial development, GDP growth in India? Because the corporate sector says that there is no demand coming from below. Why? Because income levels of the people are very low. And because of lockdown, the factories have been stopped, employment has been stopped, income has been stopped. There is no demand coming from below. And therefore, it is very difficult for the higher level manufactured products to start the factory because there is no demand coming up. The next very important factor is that Government of India gave a package of about 20 lakh crore rupees, and it forms about 10% of the GDP. All the while, the Government of India has been operating, including the Reserve Bank, on the supply side. How to increase the ease of doing business, liquidity from banks, easily available loans to the manufacturers and small producers also, MSME and corporates. But these are all supply side factors. They are not demand side factors. And therefore, in spite of about 10% of the GDP package being given by the Government of India, it has not directly helped the demand factor. It has indirectly helped to increase the liquidity, loan availability. But unless there is a demand, even MSME, small manufacturing, small industries also cannot start because the demand is not coming from rural area and low income urban people. What China has did while giving the package during the corona period, its package is supposed to be 2% of the Chinese GDP compared to some 11%, 10% of Brazil, America, and other countries. Its package has been low. But the scholars say that China has developed a meaningful package. What is the meaning of meaningful package? China identified the products, the commodities, which must be promoted so that manufacturing starts, demand starts. And China gave product-wise subsidy to the consumers. They call it ticket. You take this, it is for milk. You take this for textiles. You take this, it is for furniture. So whatever demand had to be generated, the specific product-wise subsidies have been given to the people, so that people take the token, go to the shops and purchase the goods. The price is paid by the government. But there is a demand created immediately for those products. And once the demand has been created, production starts. That is how China has been able to give 3.2% positive GDP growth rate, what we call as targeted consumer subsidies. In India, the targeted consumer subsidies have been neglected. The government is giving dal chawal or dal gehu food supply, but jobs have not been created in the rural area. Their product demand is not being satisfied, and therefore, if you have seen on the TV yesterday or day after or day before, the migrant laborers are coming back to cities because they say jobs and income is not available in the rural area, so we are again come to big cities. They are facing a double trouble, whether they will get the job, number one, and whether they will be able to face the corona. Like in Maharashtra, Bombay is the worst affected corona area. But they have to come because nothing is available, or nothing means satisfactorily, things are not available in the rural area. Therefore, in India, we have not been able to create demand immediately. Once the demand is not immediately created, production does not start immediately. Why have we not been able to create demand? Two factors responsible. One is that in India, government has not started spending directly for demand creation. Many economists have emphasized that you must put money into the hands of the people so that they can immediately spend and demand can rise. But simply by giving dal chawal or dal gehu, the market demand doesn't start, because people have so many demands to meet and they have no money. The workers who were getting something like 20,000 rupees in Mumbai or Surat or Ahmedabad or Delhi, they have gone back to villages, and in Narega they get hardly 6,000 rupees per month, 1/3 of their earlier income. In 1/3 of income, they cannot maintain their family, and therefore they say, corona or whatever it is, we are coming back to the big cities for industrial jobs. And therefore we are in a quandary. What is to be done? In fact, we should have provided more things, better things in the rural area so that workers can stay. Even today it is needed that a satisfactory standard of living and employment should be made available. Constitution says that every individual has a fundamental right to have a decent living. Are we giving decent living in the rural area? If not, the people are coming back to the cities. Whatever they get or they do not get, they do not know, but they are traveling back to industrial areas. We have not been able to plan their going to villages, and we have not been able to plan their coming back to Mahanagars, mega cities. And therefore, there is a tremendous gap of planning in employment, in wages, in health standards, in housing, and therefore we are facing a number of problems. And people say that unless these things are properly done by the state governments and by the central governments, the people will not have satisfactory level of living in villages, satisfactorily job standards in villages. And when they come back to big cities, what is waiting for them? Is there a decent house to live? Is there a decent job promised to them? No. They have to again find it out. Maharashtra government has started a portal, Mahajobs, so that demand and supply can be matched. But it is uncertain. Nobody knows where they are living and what is the place of job. Nobody knows what is the level of wages that they will be paid. Yesterday there was a debate. The building construction industry, what we call real estate, their representative said we are giving them housing, we are giving them good wages, and the representative of labor union said that both these things are not being received by the workers. What is the reality? We do not know. And one of the gaps that has been identified by many scholars is that government data are not put out frequently, and therefore we are not in a position to know what exactly is the reality. Private sector rating agencies are producing data. All India Manufacturers Association organization is producing its own data and telling something. But government data is lacking, its frequency is slow, and therefore exactly what is the government's position and authenticity on the part of the government, people do not know. But people ought to know. People must know the reality. The third thing is that once we unlock, that means lockdown situation is relaxed, so many questions come up. How do the industry start? Where do they start? What new package government of India is now this week is thinking of a new package to be given. What new package will be there? And when all these packages are released by the government, some money is also handed over to the people. The concern of the scholars is that money is being spent. Who bears the money? Who pays for that money if subsidy and packages are there? Poor people have no jobs. Poor people have no wages, and therefore they have no additional capacity to pay taxes. Middle income people have reduced jobs, reduced income standards, and therefore reduced tax paying capacity. Now, two things remain. One is that can the rich people contribute? People say that there should be additional cess on higher incomes, additional cess on GST, additional corona cess to finance the corona packages, and they should be applicable to higher incomes. But what in reality is happening? The upper income level taxation has not been there. No increase in taxation has been there. But in the form of additional excise duty on petrol and diesel, there has been a continuous increase in the diesel and petrol prices, which the common man has to pay predominantly. Because to go to his job, to take the children to school, to go to vegetable market, every time he has to use petrol or diesel. The farmers have to use diesel for farming occupation. And therefore, the whole burden is being today borne by the common man. The government and the supporters of the government say that somebody has to bear it. And what is wrong if the common man bears it? The question is not properly stated when it is said like this. The question is that during the globalization period, last 30 years, income disparities between rich people and the poor people have increased almost in all the countries. But in India, they have increased it more. The data are available. And therefore, increase of disparities means the poor people are getting poorer. They pay the more taxation, like petrol prices, and diesel prices and other things. And the higher income people have a cushion. They have a privilege not to pay. If this is happening, and then we compare China and India, in China, the common man gets the satisfactory level of wages, satisfactory level of employment, satisfactory housing conditions, satisfactory health facilities. And therefore, the crux, the most important part of economic development process is that what do the people get from economic growth? People must get, and people should get, a good standard of living, good education, good health, good housing, good job, good salaries. But during the last 30 years of liberalization, we find in India, we have not been able to give justice to the common man. Relatively, we say, not in absolute sense. China has done it better. It doesn't mean that we support the political decision making of China or political structure of China or the India-China, whatever border disputes are getting. We are not favoring China. We are comparing the economic content of the economic policy, welfare content of the economic policy of India and China. And independently, we have to say that the Chinese government has been able to do it better. We have to do it now. And therefore, we have to assure to our own people. Many economists have said that government of India should immediately start giving money into the hands of the people, so that from the same evening, demand in the market starts rising. Today, whatever demand increase has been found in the market language, it is called green shoots. That means some hope that demand for scooters has increased, demand for basic models of cars have increased. Yes, they are green shoots, but they are green shoots because due to corona and corona effect, people do not want to travel in buses. Therefore, they are willing to purchase two-wheelers. Those who can purchase small cars, they are purchasing it. It does not mean that economic activity has started. They call it, or we call it, pent-up demand. The demand was there, it could not be satisfied, so it has now come up. It does not mean that we are going to pre-corona level of economic activity. And what we have in mind during the discussion is what will happen after corona is over, post-corona. Post-corona. Maybe after 4 months or 6 months, when corona effect is gone, earlier recession in Indian economy will be there. The effect of demonetization lingering, unemployment and other things will be there. And then today's topic says that how do we compare China and India in post-corona situation? Therefore, supposing that in 4 months or 6 months, corona effect is gone, still the market-oriented development model of India with greater liberalization and no proper targeting will continue. And a focused, more organized Chinese economy will start operating. It has learned a lesson, China, that if we fight with so many people at a time, so many countries at a time, our economic development will be affected. So it is getting amended with government of India, government of America and other things. Because it wants the economic growth to continue. But internally, it depends upon domestic demand, we are saying that let the foreign capital come, let FDI start industries, make in India, and then we should be Atmanirbhar. So we have to give a clearer policy direction to the people of India. We had Atmanirbhar policy, self-reliance. We were criticized. India was criticized that why do you go to basic learning of production process? Already the goods are available in the world. You take them. And we were rather forced to change our economic development model from Atmanirbhar to import-based development. We went on importing. And for payment of imports, we have to increase the exports. For payment of imports, we have to increase the exports because we want foreign exchange. So when we say that we want to have Atmanirbhar India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, we have to define the various dimensions of the problem, and we have to attune the policies, change our policy structure to develop the Atmanirbhar model. Because throughout the world, people are saying that globalization doesn't solve all the problems. It solves some of the problems, but not all the problems. And therefore, globalization is not the answer to all economic problems. So America says America first. UK says UK first. We will consume our own commodities. Therefore, Government of India is now also saying that we will become Atmanirbhar. So we have to be self-reliant, creating sufficient employment for our people, regulating the income distribution process in such a manner that income levels of the people rise. So economic development process must give high employment to the people and satisfactory income levels to the people, so that welfare standards of the people increase, living standards of the people increase, and therefore we have to define and redefine the Atmanirbhar process. Now the last point that we are coming to. During the last few years after liberalization, one thing has been observed and experienced, and that is that loans have been given to private sector people through the public sector banks, and the loans have not been returned to the banks. That is known as non-performing assets. Loan given but not received. And NPAs are rising. Non-performing assets are rising. We call it thakit karz. Loans not returned to the banks. And therefore, banks are facing a difficult situation that people's money has been handed over in the form of loans to some people that has not been received. So common people are finding it very difficult as to what is the future of our public sector banks. Now Government of India is saying that the uncertainties are so much and they are going to continue, that NPAs will rise. Day before, Raghuram Rajan has said that within 6 months, NPAs in Indian economy will rise, which means that loans given by the banks will not come back to the banks, and banks will come in a difficulty. So the Government of India is saying that we have to put capital into the banks, recapitalization. Now it is a very strange situation. Banks are supposed to be profit making. They are supposed to be helping the government through those profits. Now a situation has arisen where the public sector banks have come under a stress situation where the banks are not able to recover all the loans, and therefore people's money has been handed over to somebody. We call it bad loans. We call it non-performing assets. But unless the loans are recovered, the banks cannot continue to function. And the common man is losing faith whether the banks will continue to be there. The government of India has done very well that the banks have been merged, the banks have been made bigger, and the recapitalization is being done to keep faith of people in the financial stability of banks. But it also means that everything is not well among the public sector banks. It is causing worry to the people. It is causing worry to the state also, to the Reserve Bank also. And therefore, the financial sector, the production sector must act together to promote the production activity. It must be sold in the market. Demand must be created so that GDP grows, national income grows. And if national income grows, if the cycle starts of national income growth, then the welfare of the people can be ensured. And the young people of today do have, the rural people in India do have a right through the constitution of a very good standard, decent standard of life. Unless that decent standard is given to the people, we cannot say that we are implementing the constitution in a safe manner, in a satisfactory manner. Courts operating is one thing, but are the people getting results in their life? Are the young people getting a hope of a new society? If not, then we have to think over it. And the corona has given us an opportunity to think about our immediate problems, our short-term problems, our long-term problems, and design our policies in such a manner that we also go. We need not compare ourselves with China every time, but we also go on a progress path where people get satisfactory living standards out of the functioning of the economy. I think to the best of my ability, I have tried to place before you the problems of today and the direction in which we ought to go. I am thankful to the organizers and to the listeners. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir, for your nice presentation. Really, it was full of substance, reality, and solutions. Thank you, sir. Now, there are 4 questions from participants to you, sir.
Yes.
2 questions from Avneet Neem. His
Yes.
first question is the present situation is the indicating towards starting point of new Cold War through re-emergence of bipolarity?
In fact, it is said by so many scholars that no country in the world wants a war. No country in the world can afford to start a war or participate in a war, because war means spending on bombs, spending on aeroplanes, spending on war material, and to that extent not spending on hospitals, educational institutions, food and other things. So if we want people to get a better standard of life, no country in the world would like to have either Cold War or a hot war. And therefore, all countries are threatening to each other, but they are not starting a war. And if they start a war, it will be an unfortunate thing. But every country has a policy of not to start a war.
Thank you, sir. Its second question is communism proved themselves better than democracy in most walk of life?
Let us not think of communism in terms of Soviet Union or China or Yugoslavia or Cuba. Let us think of communism in Indian context. It means better standards of life for all the people. That should be our simple definition of communism in India, socialism in India. That means equal opportunity for a better standard of life. All children in the rural area, all children in the urban poor area have an equal right over the resources of this country. And therefore, we should have some model of socialism, communism in India, but that should be in the Indian context strictly. It has nothing to do with what happened in Soviet Union, what happened in China, what happened in Vietnam or Cuba. It should be in the strict sense of Indian context. And you have given me a very good opportunity. Let me say that there is an interview by Dr. Ambedkar to BBC somewhere in 1952 or 53, when the anchor asked Dr. Ambedkar, what model of economic development you have in mind for India? And there are only 3 or 4 words Dr. Ambedkar said. They are available on the BBC interview. Dr. Ambedkar said, some sort of socialism. And that is our motto. That is our ideal today.
Exactly, sir. Then third question from Aboli Sargar. She asked, how can China change their attitude towards Indian trade exchange?
Indian
Trade exchange.
trade exchange.
Yeah.
You know, as we said in the presentation, during the last 30 years, China increased its capacity, increased its the quality of product to such an extent that Bajaj two-wheeler chairman said that the quality of Chinese engines are good. We are using Chinese engines in Bajaj scooters, which means that China has increased the quality of its own product. Secondly, in manufacturing of electricity, the big machinery that is utilized is China made. Let us understand. So China has improved the quality of its material goods. India also has to improve the quality of goods. Why not why not China use the Indian machinery? Why India is using Chinese machinery? Because that machinery has been properly developed and we have not developed our own machinery. When we have all electronic goods, the bulbs and the tube lights and sound system and mobiles, everything Chinese made. Why can't Indian industry make it? Even the doormats and Devata photos and Rangoli, Holi, Pichkari, everything is made in China. What has happened to our business management? What has happened to our quality of technical education? Why did we not do it and China did it? Therefore, the essence is that we have to improve. And maybe need not compare every time with China, but we improve the quality so much that the world over people should prefer Indian.
Thank you, sir. Then fourth question is from Anita Panot. Is the government not aware about what you are addressing? Why the government do not have realistic plan?
I'm thankful to her. She is very direct in asking the question.
Yeah.
Whatever I have said is being published regularly. Even I have utilized the material which has been published today in the newspapers also, in various books also. So government also knows what I am saying. But government has its own thinking also. It has its own political thinking. It has its own social policy. It has its own cultural policy. And therefore, government policy is a combination or mixture of so many dimensions, which I may not agree totally, or the question asking lady also may not agree, but we have differences and we have different viewpoints. So government has a particular viewpoint from which it fixes or it designs its own policy. If the policy does not fit into the reality, we get the results of one type. If the policy fits very well into the reality, we get better results. And therefore, how the government policy will change depends upon the government itself. The RBI governor has very rightly said that if the situation is extraordinary, we will have solutions extraordinary. So let the government have solutions extraordinary.
Thank you, sir. Any question
you.
from participant? Name is not mentioned. So, Dr. Rushali asked you how we can focus on microfinance to increase standard of living of rural and slum area people.
It's a very important question.
Yes.
We have been concerned with microfinance operating in the rural areas. And as we must have seen that the rural women have shown leadership in organizing microfinance groups, but they have not been planned or designed to give effective results. Many times the microfinance private sector companies go to rural area, they distribute large amounts of loans, and the recoveries are done during the daytime or evening time or night, and people get harassed. That is the situation. We have to plan the microfinance functioning into the broader economic policy. How much employment results from that? How much income results from that? How much quality improvement results from that? How much technology goes into the production of micro production groups? All these things are to be planned and designed to give us better results. That is not happening today, and therefore we get a problem of microfinance companies.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Oh, I am very much thankful to all of you for giving opportunity and for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. We are coming at end of the webinar now. I request to my colleague, Professor Dr. Mohan Wankhede, Head of the Department of Paliprakrut for Hota, France. Dr. Mohan Wankhede.
Thank you, sir. I am very much thankful to the resource persons of this webinar, Honorable Dr. Srinivas Khandewale, sir, and Honorable Dr. Vijay Khare, sir, for their thought-provoking vision as well as most valuable time for this webinar. Thanks a lot to the participants of this webinar, especially scholars and students from the various regions of the country and from abroad, especially Session, Abhijit, Swapnil, Shruti, and many more. Thanks to the Honorable Principal, Dr. Pratibha Siria, for her welcome speech and continuous efforts as well as valuable support. Thanks to Dr. Shailesh Bahadure, Kamlesh Khairkar, Ashish, Sachin, Shuddhodhan for their technical support. Thanks to my colleagues, Professor Dr. Gautam Kamble, Professor Dr. Avinash Fuljale, and Professor Vidya Chorpagar for their continuous efforts for this webinar. Thanks to the Institute for Infrastructure and Blessings. Lastly, I would like to thank our chairman of Param Pujya Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar Smarak Samiti, Honorable Bhadant R.A. Nagarjun Suresh Sasaiji, Secretary, Honorable Dr. Sudhir Fuljale, Honorable members, Mr. N.R. Sute, Mr. Vilas Gajghate, and remaining members of Smarak Samiti. I hence announce this webinar has ended successfully. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.